Legend is a 2015 crime film depicting the life of Britain's most well-known gangsters, the Kray twins, Ronnie and Reggie Kray, who control the criminal underworld in 1960s East London and beyond. The film charts their rise and fall in prominence, both in terms of their power and their mythical aura, which is probably where the movie's name comes from. And there's definitely credence to that. British gangsters aren't historically well known as, say, American ones, and yet there's always been something different about the Krays, for whatever reason. Perhaps it's the twin thing. Maybe it's that there's some element of truth, that they usually only hurt other gangsters and their control of London kept the streets clean for average people. Or maybe that's complete hogwash, and they were simply violent, unstable thugs who just happened to capture the public's attention and imagination, as many criminals have done over the ages. As the first line of the film says, everyone's got a story about the Kray twins. Even I have one. The closest being an engineer I used to work with, telling me he did electrical work in one of the twins' prison cells while he stood by with a guard. I don't know if it's true, but there's definitely a contingent of British society that relishes in the idea of having encountered the Krays in some way. Legend's main selling point, or its gimmick if you will, was that it cast a Tom Hardy at the peak of his popularity in the role as both Kray twins. An interesting creative idea, if ultimately a little pointless. I mean, the Krays didn't even really look that similar. A previous Krays movie, one that I didn't think that much of, had the gimmick of casting two real-life brothers as the twins, and this movie goes a step further and casts the same guy. Still though, it means twice as lot of Hardy in the film, who is definitely the best thing about the movie, elevating what could otherwise be fairly ordinary material. From a technical point of view, for the most part, the effects are seamless. You do get a feel that these are two distinct characters, and there's not a lot of obvious special effects when the two are in the same frame. Hardy's Reggie is usually the film's main focal point, the more likeable of the two brothers, who seems to have his head screwed on straight, who is constantly dogged by his doting wife to leave the life of crime and go straight. Over the course of the film, Reggie is unravelled and revealed as really not being too dissimilar to his brother, which takes a toll on his fragile wife. Ronnie, a man who is certified as insane in real life, is the wild and unstable one, with Hardy gleefully relishing the wackiness that the role brings, channeling his more crazier characters like the prisoner Charles Bronson, who funnily enough, one of the Kray twins met.
What is that?
Yeah, what do you think, Puff? It's a fucking tool.
No, it's not. It's a fucking rolling pin. What are you gonna do with that? You gonna bake me a cake? You gonna sing me a song, watch me blow out me fucking candles? I come here for a fucking shootout, right?
Whilst the character is well defined and has his own personality, I do consider Ronnie as something of the film's comic relief, who brought a lot of laughs, and the movie contained some memorable fun scenes, almost all of them involving Ronnie in some form.
Get out me fucking way. Go on, get up. Go on, fuck off. A shootout, right, is a fucking shootout! Wankers. Fucking embarrassing. Waste of our time. Fucking waste of our time.
Should Ronnie really come off as a comedy relief? Probably not, but it is what it is. Legend is a bit of a strange movie. It feels like it lacked experience behind the camera, and what resulted is a picture that isn't quite sure what it is looking to achieve. I like the movie, and honestly I went in thinking I'd hate it because from the trailers and whatnot it just didn't look too great, but I found it to be quite a fun watch, paced engagingly. It was funny, it had Hardy in fine form carrying it, but it did take some readjusting of expectations. In fact, I remember the exact scene where I readjusted my expectations of the film early on. It was when the two Krays walk into a bar meeting, which is an obvious trap laid out for them. Unfazed by the mob that surrounds them, Reggie pours himself a pint and Ronnie launches into a monologue about rolling pins, Geronimo, and Western shootouts. And an actual little Western movie chime starts playing as he's rambling, with him walking out of the pub in utter disgust at the caliber of the gangsters he's been faced with. I'm surprised some tumbleweed didn't roll across the frame as he walked down the street to complete the effect. It was at that moment I thought to myself, okay, this is not really a serious gangster film, is it? This scene belongs in a Guy Ritchie knockoff. Ronnie ends up coming back with some weapons and the two brothers wreak havoc on the other gangsters. And after it's all said and done, Reggie has his pint and Roger continues to sadistically hammer away at his victims. In some ways, the scene kind of summarizes the film. It wants to be this funny, eerie, light film that's easy to watch for gangster movie fans. But like the fight, it wants to be brutal and hard-hitting. As Reggie's confident and suave demeanor in this scene suggests, the film is quite clearly in love with the Kray twins and wants to show them as always above the competition, always knowing what to do and being in complete control of every situation they're in. And with Ronnie doing the hammering, no pun intended, it wants to maintain the reality that these men were absolutely vicious. It does feel like Legend wants to have its cake and eat it. It clearly shows the Krays in a positive light. I usually roll my eyes at complaints about gangster films where people say the movie glorifies them. And perhaps we should go easy on Legend because they were glorified in real life too. But the way the movie goes about it was like this. And then it's like it thinks, oh crap, we're supposed to do the whole, these men are charming, lovable and have hearts of gold, but deep down they are horrible and cruel thing. Panicking as the film is coming to a close, so it throws in scenes like Reggie beating and apparently raping his wife, which by all accounts seems to be fiction. I mean, I'm not expecting a documentary. Ronnie's openness about his homosexuality, for example, was a complete fabrication, as in real life he kept it quiet because it could be used against him. But Legend's handling of its subject matter leaves questions as to what exactly I'm supposed to think about the Kray twins by the end of the film. And ultimately, I just put my hands up and say, you know what? Forget all about that. It was a fun film in the end. I don't know if that's what the director wanted, but that's what I got from it. But should I really be coming away from a movie about the Kray twins thinking it was fun? Should a film like this really whitewash how terrifying they were? There's a line in the film where Reggie's trying to mend his relationship with his missus, where he says, we can get rid of everything that's bad and just keep everything that's good. I feel like that's what the film did itself. Just removing the toxic elements of the Krays, showing them as good sons, clever, brave, strong, polite, helpful, with the occasional brutal beating to ward off complaints that the movie adores the twins. It does try to play the condemnation game, but it's weak and flaccid. In fact, many of the Krays' violent actions in the film are justified to an extent, like that pub trap that I mentioned. In terms of showcasing why a dark underworld can be so appealing and alluring, and why it is ultimately hollow and violent, in terms of highlighting charming and likable lead characters and pulling the rug from underneath you to show how terrible they are, Legend's execution feels lackluster. Martin Scorsese's The Wolf of Wall Street, this is not, and it does appear that when it comes to gangster films, he really is the master when it comes to showing a gangster's lifestyle without dipping too far into condoning it or condemning it. Speaking of Scorsese, he should probably have been given a thank you credit. As so much of Legend is lifted from Goodfellas, it could be argued the film is a soft remake. Entire story beats, the overall trajectory of the film, the constant use of upbeat music juxtaposing the violence on screen, specific scenes, the wife being the narrator, and even the famous Copacabana one take is echoed in Legend in the scene where Reggie shows his new girlfriend around his club. Except Legend is the comedy version of the film, with, say, Tommy DeVito, representative of the instability and terror in that world, a funny guy in the film, with us looking in from the outside, but he's clearly very dangerous, and there is an unease in the film when he's on screen. Hardy's Ronnie, however, is quite clearly played for laughs, and you never truly get a sense of the twins' menace in the film. There isn't much to chew on intellectually in the film. If you remember, in The Wolf of Wall Street, for example, Jordan Belfort tells the cops even after he wins the case, he'll still be riding home in the subway. And there's later a short scene of this actually happening, with the cop looking thoughtful. Much to chew on, it's a great scene. In Legend, the cop asks Reggie why he turned out the way he did and why the cop turned out the way he did when both grew up poor and in similar conditions. The scene doesn't have much pathos, and is ultimately played to show how cool the Krays are as they end up stitching the cop up. Near the end, when Reggie is looking depressed in prison, why not include a scene or mention of the cop dying at 95, surrounded by family, having lived a full life, and contrasted this with Reggie, who lived an affluent life but died depressed and alone, apparently having tried to take his own life a few times. It would have given the film a bit of meat, made it less fluffy, given us something to chew on, given us something to think about, like, which kind of life is better? One where you don't get much, but you're surrounded by people who love you and you live a long life, or one where you get so many material things, but it's cut short and people don't like you and don't remember you. I would have liked to have seen more of how the Krays rose and just how they gained control of London, the criminal enterprise aspect of the duo's lives. Most of it was us just being told, rather than actually being shown. Plus, there were no real memorable characters outside of the Krays themselves. All in all though, on its own and removed from the historical context of the Kray twins, Legend is a movie I enjoyed and found well crafted, engaging and fun, albeit with a few draggy elements in the second and third act. It was a decent movie, but it does have a Hollywood sanitized feel about it. Really, if you remove Hardy from the equation, there isn't that much the film has going for it. Bronson was a crazy film, and you truly got a sense of his insanity. Legend isn't anywhere near as comparable, and I suppose that's okay. Just don't go in expecting anything great, and you might just have fun with this film.